Welcome back to Harmonize Your Life, Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast with your host, Dr. Toni G. Alvarado. Let me say one more time, Happy New Year. This is the second week of the year that we are in, and I want to make sure that I continue to say Happy New Year to you. We have just begun a new series of podcast episodes in this new year. Many of you know that we took a break in the month of December, just took a inhale, exhale moment, a woosah moment, or whatever you want to call it. And we are ready to go with some new episodes, some new dialogue, new conversations with new guests for the Harmonize Your Life podcast. I'm so excited about our guest on today, and I'm so excited about our topic, and you're going to be blessed as well. I'll be right back with my guest. Well, let me introduce today's guest to you. You're going to be so blessed by this conversation. I am glad to welcome to the Harmonize Your Life podcast my sister and my girlfriend, Reverend Jennifer Watley Maxell, affectionately known as Rev Jen, is a preacher, teacher, church, co-founder, life coach, writer, known for her interactive teaching and creative communication style. She has a passion for making the complex simple as she speaks truth to people in ways that are easily understandable and applicable to their everyday lives. With the blessing of Bishop William P. DeVoe, former presiding prelate of the 6th Episcopal District of the AME Church, Jennifer and her husband, Reverend Charles Maxell Jr., founded the Breakthrough Fellowship, a new church initiative located in Cobb County, Georgia. Ever since its inception as a Bible study in their home, the Breakthrough Fellowship has maintained its mission of helping broken people find wholeness through an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. Reverend Jen exemplifies the mission as the founder of the Ellipsis Experience, a 3-day conference for women and teen girls that provides a safe space for them to creatively engage their personal stories and the Christ story through dynamic worship, transformative interactive workshops, and anointed fellowship. In addition to blogging, Reverend Jen is a contributing author of the book, Why Black Lives Matter 2, a revolutionary call to action, and has co-authored Like Father, Like Daughter, Meditations and Reflections on Fathers and Daughters in the Bible with her father, Dr. William D. Watley. Reverend Jen received her Bachelor of Arts degree in philosophy from Howard University and her Master of Divinity degree from Emory's Candler School of Theology with certificates in Black Church Studies and Religious Education. And she's an ordained itinerant elder in the AME Church since May of 2017. Born in Atlanta, Georgia, raised in New Jersey, Reverend Jen currently resides in Smyrna, Georgia. She and her husband, Charles, and their 3 children, Madison, Charles III, and their daughter, Skylar. Their daughter, Madison, son, Charles III, and their daughter, Skylar. And their 2 dogs.
2 dogs.
Can't forget the dogs, honey. Somebody said, Dr. Toni, we just did a Christmas photo shoot, and I told somebody Leo thought the photo shoot was all about him, girl.
Well, we already had 1 dog, and we did like many people and got a COVID dog. So now we have 2. One is a puppy, one is not, and the older sibling, Princess, is not too thrilled about Bentley, the puppy. They get along most of the time, but we do have some wailing and gnashing of teeth a good hour throughout every day. So yeah, we're all learning to get adjusted to that.
Oh my goodness. Well, Jen, I'm glad to have you with me on the Harmonize Your Life podcast. And as I said to you when I called you and asked you to come on with me this month, I want us to just do like we do. You know how we do.
Most definitely.
Yeah, we get together and we have good, intimate conversation about whatever, about life, about ministry, relationships, girlfriend stuff. And so we're just going to listen. Jen and I going to have a conversation that we normally have, just being ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're just going to let y'all eavesdrop in on our conversation. Okay.
Yeah. Welcome to our world, folks.
Welcome to our world. You know, Jen, when I was reading your bio, something I was reminded of when I first met you. In your bio, it talks about how you make things that will be complex very simple. Mm-hmm. And very applicable to our lives. And it reminded me of the first time I heard you preach. Do you remember?
I don't think I do. When was that?
So let me tell you. So the first time I heard you preach was at Women in Ministry.
Oh, okay.
And you know how we know of people, you know, you see people from afar, that kind of thing. And, you know, in ministry, you know, the church world and ministry world is small in a lot of ways. And so I knew of you. Of course, I've known of your father for years and St. Philip's AME and all of that. I know the tradition from which you come out of. And so when I heard you preach that particular day, and I don't know if you remember what you preached, but you talked about crayon. You took a box of crayons. Mm-hmm. You remember that?
Yeah, broken crayons, still color.
Those broken crayons, and the image that you gave us on that day. Oh, we were just tore up by the time you got done, and it was so, like you said, it was like your bio said, it was a simple analogy to, you know, just talking about how even though the crayons were broken in the box, how useful they still were, and how each crayon was a different color and they had their own unique. I ain't trying to preach your sermon all the way. You know, that was years ago, and I still remember that.
Yeah, that says a lot.
I mean, I still remember that, and I carry that message with me. I've carried that ever since you used that analogy in your sermon that day. It meant so much to all of us, but it just really just that whole how God can still use our brokenness, and how the crayons are still good. And you know, when we're growing up in school, and how, you know, it took me back to childhood and coloring, and how you had your little crayon box, and the first day of school, how your crayons are all so nice and the box is so wonderful.
That's right. I think I called myself a crayon preservationist in that sermon.
Yes.
And, you know, with anything, you know, when you preach, as much as you're preaching to the people, I feel like the sermon always preaches to me first.
It has to.
When I was thinking about, you know, it was, for me, that was my first time really preaching on a platform like that. And I was only a couple years in ministry at that point. And so I was very intimidated, because I was like, pretty much everybody in this room has been preaching a lot longer than I have. You know, what do I have to say? And so the message was a message for myself, even just having to kind of get over myself, get out of my head, get out of my way, so that I could even get up and preach the message that God had. And my background, I started in ministry relatively late, after I had already turned 40 and was married for years and had 2 different careers and all that. So I bring to the preaching moment teaching, which was my first vocation that I fell in love with. Where I really get, and my background is, I was a philosophy major and I taught cinema studies. And so between the two of them, you're always looking at these big ideas and these big concepts, and trying to get them, distill them down in a way that people can either visually understand them, or, you know, through the preached word can understand them. The other thing is, I think, because even though I am a 3rd generation preacher, whereas my 2 brothers are preachers, and they were always kind of in the church. My brothers both started preaching very early. One went the gospel choir. He was in the community gospel choir at school and went from there. My other brother went straight to seminary from undergrad. I was not that person. I was a girl hanging out and chilling and partying and doing everything I thought I was grown enough to do. And so a lot of my references and my language are not kind of the traditional church, that we use and that we draw on, even though I've been in the church my whole life. So that was one of those messages. I remember when God gave me the word, I was like, Lord, these women have been preaching forever. You're going to have me get up here talking about some crayons? Like, why can't I be valley of dry bones or, something deep, the woman at the well, some. And so when God gave me these crayons, I was like, Lord, I said, before I got up, I literally prayed. I said, God, whatever happens, it's on you. All I know is what you gave me, and this is what I'm going with. But I think it also speaks so much to not just us in terms of our personal journey, but just in terms of where we are in life right now.
Yeah.
Where our world is and being such in a dislocated, broken place. I think so many people are, first just taken aback. I mean, none of us saw this moment coming.
No.
None of us knew we would be here. And so when we look back, we all have to kind of reconcile all these systems that have broken down and all these places that have broken down and just all this stuff that is not what we expected or anticipated or thought or what we wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here we are with now broken crayons, and we are still being called to color.
Yeah. Yeah. And we still have to color with those broken crayons. And you use that concept. And that kind of leads us into another concept that I want you to break down for us today, because the concept that we're going to talk about today is one that I think that number one, is one that's not talked about much. And we certainly don't practice it like we should. And so I want to talk about the concept of Sabbath. Mm-hmm. You have an interesting take on Sabbath, which I think is wonderful. We've talked about it, and I certainly agree with you. I flow right in that same vein with your concept of Sabbath. But I just want us to kind of unpack that. We're in a new year, 2021.
Thank you, Lord, we made it.
We made it. Thank you, Jesus.
We got out of 2020.
We made it. Lord Jesus, we made it. I made it out with a new hairdo.
I made it out with all kinds of new stuff. I got my family here. I'm in my new home office and my new
Yes.
A couple new COVID pounds.
Oh yeah, all that. So we're in a new year, and oftentimes when we come to the new year, this year notwithstanding, we come in a lot of times with New Year's resolutions and concepts and goals and commitments that we want to make for the new year. And we want to live life differently. We always say we want to do something different or improve in some kind of way. And this concept of Sabbath is what I want us to talk about as we've come into this new year. Last year, 2020, it is what it is. And, nothing magical happened at 12:01 January 1st. We're still dealing with the same COVID-19 virus. We're still dealing with the same political drama. We're still dealing with the same racial tension. All of that, the year changed, but all that stuff is still with us. And so the concept of Sabbath. And one of the things that I was sharing prior to our conversation, I had a conversation with on our podcast with Dr. Valerie Bridgman. And we were talking about holistic living. And we talked about that, how some of the gems that we found in 2020, even though there were a lot of things about 2020 caught us off guard. We didn't, we had to do things differently. We had to make pivots. We lost people physically to COVID-19 and other diseases or issues. And some people just suddenly or natural causes. We lost family members, friends, colleagues, those kind of things. We lost finances. It's true. Some of the ways that we would normally work we had, some of our work was canceled, and so that impacted us in some financial ways, and not just us in ministry, but just in general. People have lost wages, those kind of things, jobs. Some people have literally lost jobs. So, but COVID or the pandemic there's some blessings that we found in it, because for a lot of us, it forced us to live life differently. We found out there were some things that we could live without, that we thought we couldn't live without, and so it forced us in a lot of ways. To me, it forced us to a place of Sabbath rest. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, everybody I know, myself included, everybody I know was, we were running, going, here, there, and yon. And it was like, especially at first, it was like a major, just everybody sit down.
Right. Yeah. Stop what you're doing.
Stop. Okay. Stop. And, for a minute, we were all kind of in shock. So we couldn't do nothing but sit still. And then you and I talked about after the newness of it, or the shock of it, wore out, then we started finding ourselves busy again with Zoom calls and Zoom meetings and this, that, and some of us found that we were working harder from home than we were when we were going to the office.
It's true. It's true. Well, because not only then were we working, but then we were also learning new skills. And so there was this learning curve that we are now engaged in learning how to, navigate Zoom and Zoom rooms and host meetings and all of that. And as well as then actually doing the work that we had already been doing. And so I think that was one of the things that really started getting me to think differently about this idea of Sabbath. And I've always, like you, been a proponent of self-care, as I still am very much. But the other thing that I've started to really think about is the role of soul care, which to me, when I think about Sabbath, I think about soul care. Okay. And what I often say is, you're not yourself without Sabbath. So I think about that Snickers commercial, where it has they're acting one way and they eat the Snickers, and then all of a sudden, because, again, you're not yourself when you're hungry. And I think Sabbath is something very similar. What's interesting to me is that Sabbath actually predates the church. And so Sabbath is a part of our spirituality that we should be practicing from the very beginnings of our knowledge of God. And Sabbath is mandated by God for creation. Yeah. This isn't something that's based on your denomination or your belief system or, who you worship or how you worship or where you worship or if you worship. This Sabbath is set forth for creation. All of creation. Regular, consistent practice that we are supposed to observe. And so once every 7 days, we are to take a break, to take a pause from what we do normally, and to engage in activities and practices that feed our soul, that feed our spirit. Yeah. And I think at some point, for a lot of us, if we're honest, Sabbath became the day we go to church.
Oh, come on.
And the good and the bad thing about that is, the good thing is that it helps it to be a regular part of our week. And it definitely sets our day, our Sunday, apart from the rest of the week. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is, for a lot of us, whether we be clergy or just people who are in leadership in our churches or, volunteers, Sabbath as church can often also become another work day.
Yeah. And especially those of us who are in ministry.
Exactly.
It is, it is for us, because we're facilitating the worship experience for others.
Exactly.
And so it does become, it's a work day.
Exactly.
And so, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
And for those of us who aren't ministers, what happens a lot of times, Sabbath then gets reduced to the time you're at church. And so Sabbath is the 2 or 3 hours that you may spend with your family at church and worship. But then when you get out and you go eat, then you can go back to the office, or you can go and do work. You can go and do whatever, because again, we've married this idea of Sabbath with church going. And Sabbath is something completely different in my mind.
Okay.
I definitely think that, going to church can be part of it, but it's not it all by itself.
Okay.
And so when I look at Sabbath, like I said, I approach it from this position of soul keeping. And there's a book by Marva Dawn that is called Keeping the Sabbath Holy.
Okay.
WHOLLY, Keeping the Sabbath Holy. And she lays out this rubric of Sabbath keeping as ceasing, resting, embracing, and feasting.
Ceasing, resting, embracing, and feasting. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I love that because two of them, the ceasing and resting, are kind of low energy, kind of laying things down, setting aside. But the other two, embracing and feasting, are kind of the more active, bringing things on. And I think a lot of times when we think of Sabbath, we think, okay, I need to just do nothing.
Right.
I need to just be quiet. I just need to sit, and I just need to be somewhere. And let's be honest, that's hard to do for most of us. That's hard to do.
It is.
And so to me, I love this idea that yes, the ceasing and the resting is part of it, but we also have this idea of embracing and feasting. And so when I think of Sabbath, it's not just what am I going to give up, or what am I going to stop, but it's also what am I going to feast on? What are the things that I'm going to embrace? What is something that I'm going to bring into my life in my Sabbath day that I don't
precious
in my other days? And to me, that's where we start to really build this rhythm of 6 days on, 1 day off, 6 days on, 1 day off. And I think that that's a really important aspect of Sabbath, because I think that especially now with technology and the way we have access, we can work 24/7.
Yeah.
24 hours a day. And many of us do. We'll take an hour or two off, watch a movie, watch a game. Before we can even, get out and get the credits roll, we're already checking our work email, and we could just shoot off an email and answer. And before you know it, we've got 2 hours of work in on whatever our day off is supposed to be.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think Sabbath gets confused with vacation time. And vacation time is valuable, but vacation time is not Sabbath either.
Right, exactly.
Because we can be on vacation and we can be resting, we can be ceasing, but we can also not be engaging in things that are edifying to our soul, things that are connecting us greater to God, closer to God, that are allowing us to restore that part of our soul that gets so tired and weary. And so I think,
let me ask you this question. So can we have Sabbath moments while we're on vacation?
Yes. And I think we can have Sabbath moments when we are on vacation. And I think we can have vacations that are Sabbath for us. But I think it takes intentionality.
Okay.
Us thinking about, because I think, again, what we think about is, okay, well, if I'm on the beach and I'm just, not doing anything and I'm sitting there reading a book and everything, then that's Sabbath. And my thing is, it can be. But my question is then, okay, you're on the beach, you're doing nothing. What are you reading? Are you reading something that is edifying to your soul? What are you
taking in?
Something that is edifying to your soul. Because even if you're not doing anything physically, if you're resting and you're ceasing from work, but what you're listening to and the conversation that you're having or what you're thinking about or what you're reading is something that is not edifying spiritually, then I don't know if that necessarily will qualify as Sabbath, although you are resting, you're ceasing, and that's vacation.
Okay. So you for you, does it mean you have to be, like, for instance, when I think of Sabbath, I think of a time where I have intentionally blocked out distractions that allow me to sometimes it's journaling, sometimes it's reflection and those kind of things. that refresh my soul. Sometimes it could be reading, but then sometimes it's not reading. Sometimes it's me, what I'm writing, what I'm thinking about and putting down. Or like if I'm walking, sometimes it's just taking in, nature, or when I walk on the beach, listening to the water, those kind of things. Can you, do you consider those Sabbath?
I do. One of the things that I have instituted as a Sabbath practice for me is what I call Pajama Day.
Oh, and one yesterday. Woo!
Yeah. I'm in pajamas, work does not get done.
Right, exactly.
Leaning in this direction because what I started noticing was that even in COVID, and even when I'm quarantined in my house, my alarm goes off, I get up, I get my coffee, I put on my on-screen clothes, hair, makeup, get ready for my day.
Yeah.
Even in pajama mode, those were days where I didn't have anything to do on screen. And what I was realizing a good, I would say 2 or 3 months in Sabbath, was my body was getting tired.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't traveling, and even though I wasn't driving and doing some of the other physical things, just being on and kind of holding that tension in my body. So what I would do is I would take my computer and I would bring it in my bed. So I'm still working and answering emails and writing and doing all of those other things, but I'm in my pajamas, so it's a little bit more relaxing.
Okay. So
the way that changes for Sabbath is some days I will literally get up and kind of eat breakfast and, get the kids out and then I'll actually get back in bed.
Right.
And do some deep breathing and listen to some good music and just kind of relax myself.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even just reading, a book that I've been reading that's, edifying to my soul and giving me life. And let me say, it does not, I don't think, have to be even explicitly like the Bible.
Right. Right.
Readings that I do that just energize me and they just replenish me and refresh me. And so when I think of Sabbath practices, I think that they are also, like I said, this embracing, this tension between embracing and giving up, this tension between ceasing and feasting. One of the things, I was reading a book by Abraham Heschel on Sabbath, and one of the things they talk about in the Jewish tradition is feasting and this idea of holy sensuality.
Okay.
I think when we talk about Sabbath, we tend to think of an emptying out and a letting go of, and kind of almost like a sparsity or a scarcity. We need to be poured out. We just need to be empty. But part of their idea was the way that they bring themselves into the Sabbath mindset by lighting a candle. They have the family around the table. They have a meal together. There is this sumptuousness in terms of time. They linger over the meal. They linger in relationships. So it's not this quick, let's eat and, edify ourselves and like it. It's this lingering over the meal. It's this spending time with God. It's this feasting. And I think that that's part of what we can bring to Sabbath that will help us to really be able to, I think, embrace it in a new way, and also for it not to be such work.
Yeah.
Incorporate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I feel like the way we've talked about it has made it, it's almost like we've made it harder than it needs to be.
Yeah.
That we said, okay, I'm going to, I was talking to a friend about it and she was like, well, I put it on my calendar. She's like, because for me, it has to be at least 8 hours and it has to be this. And you have to do this. I'm like, girl, you ain't going to get no Sabbath in your life. Because as someone who knows you, that's not going to happen.
Because you'd have made rest work. It's,
You have to make your Sabbath day another work day. You have to do so much getting together and getting ready, and it's never going to happen.
I had a pajama day on New Year's Day, and I said, I said I was going to be home. It was rainy. It was cold, and it was just the perfect day to do it. But I had already said on New Year's Day, I want to rest. I just want to start the year resting. Yeah. And one of my girlfriends had an event she wanted me to come to, And I was going to go, but then she ended up canceling the event. And I was like, you know what? That's God, because I really need to stay home. I really need to rest. And so I did. I had to get up early that morning because I had promised one of my cousins that I would share on a prayer call that she was hosting. And I did do that. But I did that in my pajamas.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I went back to bed. I woke up later, washed my face, brushed my teeth. Then I went downstairs and I cooked brunch with the kids. I had told the kids I was going to cook brunch. Mm-hmm. And we had brunch together. We sat around, we laughed, we talked and all that. Cleaned up the kitchen, went back to bed. Mm-hmm. Yep. I slept for a couple of hours. Then I got up, took a shower, and put on a fresh pair of pajamas.
That's it. That's it. I love it. I love it.
So I told Bishop, I said, you know, there's a movie I wanted to watch, Sylvie's Love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had already binged on the Bridgerton, right? Yeah.
We on the same Netflix schedule.
Right. So I said, I want to watch Sylvie's Love. And so he had, watched some of his shows that he liked. And so then we got together on the couch and watched the movie, and the kids were gone. They had gone out over to a friend's house. And I said, you know what? This was the best day. Yeah. And when I woke up the next morning, I was so refreshed, and I didn't realize how much I needed just that day. Like you said, not being not on camera. Yep. That evening, one of my cousins, she started a monthly Zoom thing for our family, because Chicago and other family members and my aunts and uncles, and we all get on there with her on the first Friday. She started doing this during the holidays, and at first I wasn't gonna come on, and then I said, well, let me just jump on for a minute. This something new to connect with the family, and so I came on, but I didn't have my camera on at first, and so my cousin was like, Toni, put your camera on. And I said, okay, I'm putting my camera on. I said, but let me tell y'all now, I'm in my pajamas. I've been in my pajamas all day.
And I'm going to stay in my pajamas.
And this is it. and they were like, oh, right. But I stayed on with them for a little bit, and then we watched the movie, Bishop and I. But it was just a wonderful, refreshing time to just, like you said, do stuff that refresh your soul. I had time with the Lord. I had time in prayer. I had time for meditation. I had time to just sleep and let my body rest. And when you talk about being on camera with us doing all this Zoom stuff, believe it or not, the computers and the camera and the lights, all that stuff is draining our energy.
Yes.
All this electricity in our homes, all this stuff flowing. It is, my daughter-in-law said to me one day, because when we started with COVID, I started building my podcast studio. Bishop was building his podcast studio. My son, he has his music studio and all that. And one day she was walking through the house and she said, I just need to get out. She said, there's too much electricity in this house.
Yep.
And we had a conversation about it. And you're right, with all this currents going through, we have to step away from this stuff.
Yeah. I was having migraines from my screens, from being on the computer. And then when I wasn't on the computer, I'm on my phone or my iPad. I'm watching television, and I had to get, these are those blue light, right? That's what my son said. We need to get blue. Exactly.
For your eyes, for your glasses.
Yep. And what I love about the day you had was, I think one of the things that we do is, we try to keep God in a box.
Yeah.
And what people do with Sabbath is like, well, I have to be reading the Bible. If I'm going to watch something, it has to be like biblical, scriptural, like it has to be everything. But the thing about it is, if we are truly in Christ and Christ is in us, then everything we do,
all of life,
God is living life with us. And so it's not about, let me take all this other stuff out. And so when I'm on Sabbath time, and my thing is, there are times where you might need a silent retreat, or you might be called to do, something special. But my thing is also like, God is in it. with it. Christ came that we might be free.
Yeah.
Part of that freedom is us being able to live and enjoy life. And to me, that's where that feasting and embracing comes in.
I love
things that you legitimately enjoy. On Thanksgiving, New Year's Day, I went to my parents' house, and it was so interesting because we got a game for Christmas, and my daughter said, well, why don't we take that with us? And I said, okay, we'll take it. And when I got there, my mom said, I really miss us playing games at holidays. And the last couple of holidays, with COVID, we've been so busy trying to social distance and everybody, that we haven't been playing games and things like we normally have. Well, this time we were intentional about finding games where we didn't have to touch stuff and be in close proximity. And we just spent 2 or 3 hours. One game we had to ask each other questions. The other one, heads up, where you're looking at it across the room. And we had 2 or 3 hours of game time. And we all were so much more relaxed. We felt so much more energized. It was just a good feeling. And so to me, I think any of those practices can be part of our Sabbath experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the more that we are systematic, one of the points that she makes, Marva Dawn makes in her book, is that Sabbath is instituted once every 7 days. Once every 7 days. And the importance of that is for it to become a regular part of our schedule. And so lately, as I've been talking to people about it, and people say, well, what's one thing I should do? The first thing I say is commit to Sabbath once every 7 days. Commit to Sabbath once every 7 days. 7 days. Now, in the beginning, that may just mean that it's 30 minutes. It may mean that it's an hour. It may mean that it's a certain activity or, whatever. My thing is be gracious with yourself. Okay. The world wasn't created in one day. So your Sabbath practice is not in one day either. So be easy with yourself in the beginning and just say, okay, once every 7 days, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to take this time, or I'm going to do something. And then once you have done that, then look to add on once you've kind of gotten that under your belt. One of the things about Pajama Day for me is when my husband and my kids see that it's 11 o'clock and I still have my pajamas on, they know. They already know. If I go downstairs, get coffee, and I get back in the bed, they already know. It's something now because I've been consistent about it, where now it's just part of all of our day. And they kind of already know, don't ask mom for nothing. She's not doing it. This is her time. This is her day. Just know it. I think that's a valuable part of it, that Sabbath, taking care of our souls, taking care of our bodies. The more we can normalize it for ourselves, and the more we can make it part of just who we are and what we do. And I think that's what also helps us in Deuteronomy. I think it's the 5th chapter. It talks about the 7th year. Yeah. About how people are supposed to release people from debts every 7 years. And how, people that have slaves are supposed to release their slaves every 7 years. And so in scripture, over and over again, there is this idea of regularly in a 7-day or 7-year period, we are to give ourselves a reset. We are to give ourselves a reset. Yes. To me, that's where I feel that the regularity comes in regularly giving ourselves. And I think that's part of why we're so burnt out sometimes. I know, especially those of us who are in ministry, especially in this season where we're learning so much new, we're engaging in so many different ways. Yeah. Church is no longer, for a lot of us, church is now in our home. We're, teaching Bible from home. We're preaching from home. We're doing all this stuff. So we don't even have the space. At the beginning of COVID, one of the things that I felt like I lost, for me, my catch-up time was in the car. So if I would leave my office, I would call one of my girlfriends and kind of on my commute. Or I would just listen to music in the car, not my kids' music, not my husband's music, my music in the car. Or just a podcast that I wanted to hear. And what I realized is losing that time, I was losing the connection. I wasn't speaking to my girlfriends as much. I wasn't catching up as much. I wasn't listening to my music and the podcasts and things, because now that space that transition created was gone. And so I've had to be intentional about creating that space. So for us, our backyard, we've used our backyard more in the last 9 months than I think we've been in the house. Because it has turned into like an outdoor living room of sorts. You know, there's a certain time at the end of the day, my husband, when he gets off that last call, he goes out in the backyard. He'll get him some tea or some lemonade, and he'll watch whatever he wants and just kind of keep his feet up. And that's his transition space.
Okay. Okay.
You know, for me, between meetings, when I've been on Zooms all morning and everything, I kind of go out in the backyard and I'll have my lunch out there, get some fresh air, just, listen to some music. And that is my transition space.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think in that way,
transition space. So we got to be intentional about creating that transition, because we got to make a transition from work to rest.
Yes.
Or from work to being to refresh and to reset. I love that transition space.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing that Sabbath does is it really goes against our economy of work.
Yeah.
Early in the pandemic, I discovered this quote by a man named David White, and it says, "The antidote to exhaustion is not rest, it's wholeheartedness." And it's really talking about this idea that part of what exhausts us isn't the fact that we are not resting. It's the fact that we have this kind of dividedness within ourselves, and we're always kind of working to overcome it. And it causes us to overfunction. It causes Brene Brown calls it stumping for worthiness.
Yeah.
Causes us to feel that we have to be on this wheel. We've got to, we got to call. Yeah. We have more to say on the calls, and we've got to be on the calls. We got to look good. Our house got to look good. The kids got to be. I mean, like it's just one layer upon layer upon layer upon layer.
Well, to see, these are the cultural messages that we've taken in. You know, the cultural messages are, you gotta grind. I gotta be, I gotta be on my grind. I gotta be on my game. I gotta be on the top of my game. And, it's constantly moving, constantly having to know what's happening, be it 2 or 3 steps ahead.
Yep.
And you're right. And we're constantly on, and we never feel like we're there. We never feel like we're constantly on our way somewhere. Yeah. And when do we get there?
So one of my colleagues I also work at the Ministry Collaborative, and I'm the program curator there. And we actually did a 6-week sprint cohort on Sabbath. And one of the things that we were looking at was the Exodus story, and the fact that when the Israelites were taken out of Egypt, they were taken into the wilderness, where not only were they not working as they couldn't, because the land was not producing. And so God was giving them manna in the wilderness. And one of the things that he was saying was that part of the distinct differentiation between the wilderness and the concept, the economy of Pharaoh, was that part of the reason for the length of time, the reason why, they had the activities, the manna, was not just to get them out of Egypt, but to get Egypt out of them. And I think when we think about Sabbath is not just about us taking time off, but it's also recalibrating us and getting our economy of work and function and overwork out of us.
You said, when we were talking before about it, you had an interesting way of expressing it. You said Sabbath is an act of resistance.
Yes.
And that's where I hear what I'm hearing now, that act of resistance from the culture, from the idea that we have to always be on, that we have to always be working, we have to always be amassing something or gaining something.
And the idea that we have to earn our way.
Mm.
The reality is, when you look at the Old Testament, and you look at all the, Leviticus, all the laws and the do's and don'ts, the commandments, just all of it. It was this idea that, what we do affects us in a certain way, and it has to be undone. So if you, when you look at Leviticus, if you did one thing, then you had to burn this sacrifice and offering. And, well, in the New Testament, Jesus came to set us free from that kind of transactional relationship.
That legalistic relationship with God.
Right. And so what we're looking at is not a transactional relationship, but economies are based on transactional relationships. And so for a lot of us, our job, we get evaluated on what we produce or what we bring to the table.
Oh, this is so good. Yes.
How much we stack up, or the worth or value of what we bring to the table. And so a lot of times when we think about God, we're thinking about it with that same, thinking cap on. But that's not the economy of the Spirit. That is not God's economy. That's a world economy. And so Sabbath really helps to pull us away from it. And I even think about, in terms of us as African Americans in this season, and how, as slaves, we were literally valued based on the amount of work that we did. And we were valued based on what we produced for someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think now we're in this season where we're really having to think twice, two times and three times about our relationship to work.
Yeah.
Not in terms of, okay, I work to provide my family. Okay, that's fine. But for so many of us, we're overworking.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're working to show value. We're overworking to show worth. We're overworking to show that we're good enough. For a lot of us that grew up in some traditional church aspects where we had this kind of responsibility politics thing going on, there had to be perfectly in place, and your stocking, everything had to be just so that you could be seen as a person of worth and value. Sabbath pushes against all of that, because Sabbath is not something that we can earn. It is not something that we can put something on and get it. It's not something, it only comes when we engage in this ceasing, resting, embracing, and feasting.
And Wayne Mueller, in one of the books that I love about, that speaks to this whole Sabbath thing, is Wayne Mueller's Sabbath, Rest and Renewal for Busy People. And he talks about Sabbath being an act of complete surrender.
Yes.
Just surrendering. And when I hear complete surrender, I hear that I don't have to earn God's love. I don't have to earn God's respect. I can just surrender to who God called me to be, surrender to this moment with God, or just this moment in time, and just relax. I don't have to kick against the grain or swim upstream. I don't have to do any of that. Just, kind of like lay on the water and let the water take you where it take you.
Yeah. Well, and even that in a lot of ways is countercultural. And I'm going to go ahead and say it, even in a lot of our church spaces.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of our traditions, there's been this kind of patriarchal controlling, thing that has gone on, which says, if you're going to be a good Christian, then, you gotta keep these rules. You got to be this kind of person. Yeah. You can't wear this. You can't eat that. You can't go here. You can't do that. And so it's kind of like these lists of rules that have been kind of ingrained in a lot of us. And it's almost like this idea of people being free and able to be free in the Spirit. A lot of people see that as very dangerous, because once we start kind of flowing in the Spirit, and once we start moving by the Spirit, then we're able to see systems that are not for our good.
Yeah.
That do not give give worth to our being, and systems that do not undergird our flourishing, our human flourishing. There's a ministry I follow. It's called the NAT Ministry. There's a sister, Trisha Hershey, that does work with it. And I love her work because she's really, really pushing those who follow her to really lean into this idea of rest as resistance to patriarchy, to consumerism, to, again, stumping for worthiness, to us being valued and commodified. And it's interesting because I can always tell, like when I'm reading some of her posts and you look in the comments, people who are new to her work, because they really come at this kind of like, well, if you all want to be lazy, that's on you. But, you know, for me, I'm not a lazy person. And this is, and I think it's this idea that we have bought into, that we are only worthy or valuable when we are earning, when we are stumping, working, when we are doing. But the message of Christ is, I have died that you might have life and have it abundantly, that I have taken your sin, your shame, your condemnation, and there's nothing you can do to either A, earn that, or B, to mess it up. So even though we mess up every day, we don't have to then make up for it.
Wow.
You know, Jesus died so that we could have it. It is Jesus's free gift to us, and we don't have to pay for it with our, and I think that's for a lot of people where they get caught, this idea of, well, I'm free, you know, the Bible says I'm free, and you teach me that I'm free, but at the same time, you also teach me that there's this cost. There's this freedom and this cost.
Okay.
And I think that it's not necessarily a cost to be paid, but I think it is a cost that we end up paying through our disconnection with the Spirit.
Well, you know, when I was talking with Dr. Valerie Bridgman about, and we kind of touched on this, we weren't really talking specifically about Sabbath, but we were talking about this holistic lifestyle. And one of the things that she said that that I'm hearing here is, she said that a lot of times when we look at things as, what do I have to give up, rather than what am I taking in? Mm-hmm. And so what I hear what you're saying is kind of turning Sabbath upside down. It's not about what laws and what rules am I beholding to or having to follow, but or what things I got to give up to have this, but it's, what am I taking in to refresh?
Yes.
What am I taking in to rest? What am I taking in to reset?
Yes.
Rather than, what am I giving out?
So one of my girlfriends, I love that. I was talking to her one day, and I said, oh, so what'd you do this weekend? And she was like, girl, we did something we've never done before, me and my husband. I said, what? She said, girl, we stayed in bed all day. I was like, all day? She was like, all day. I said, she said, all day. Now, at first I was like, but then I'm like, wait a minute, but marriage is a covenant,
right,
that we enter into with God. And there are certain aspects of marriage that are reserved for people in a marriage relationship. Uh-huh. We talk about this idea of feasting and what are you going to take on? You know, she was like, yeah. She's like, we got up and had breakfast. We got back in bed. We watched some TV. We cuddled a little bit. We talked. We snuggled. She's like, girl, we haven't had that type of togetherness and intimacy. She was like, in years. And that to me is an idea of when we talk about what are we going to take on? Feasting. What are we feasting? This is feasting, intimacy, relationship that is ordained in Scripture. Yeah. And I think sometimes we take so much away. You know, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't go here, you can't wear this, you can't eat it. It's like, oh my goodness, what can we do? What can we do? Like, this doesn't sound fun. This doesn't sound invigorating. This doesn't sound refreshing. Like, what can we do? And so it's really looking at what are the joys. And I do think that there are joys There are pleasures. Pleasure and joy are created by God. Pleasure and joy is not something that is the devil's domain, and everything pleasureful and joyous is something that, they have to do out there, And so when we have made a lot of things in our kind of secular dualistic, idea of good and bad, we have taken a lot of things in scripture that were ordained for us as believers and followers to enjoy within loving communion. We have made a lot of those things off the table. And so people are out here. I can't tell you how many times people will come in for counseling and they'll talk about something and they'll be like, well, I was out with my girlfriends and I'll admit I had a glass of wine. And I'm like, that's the first, miracle was water to wine. Like, you, baby girl, you good. Enjoy it. Like, that's not, and if you don't drink, it's fine if you do, but I'm just saying, like, that's not something that's wrong or bad, or we need to be losing sleep and feeling bad about. Enjoy your wine, girl. Enjoy it. Have fun with your friends and go about your business. Like, that's a joy. Enjoy.
And I think that these kind of conversations that we're having will help to free people.
Yes.
And when they see us modeling that and see, hey, Reverend Jen and Dr. Toni can have a glass of wine, and that doesn't mean that we've lost
exactly.
But yeah, and so I love this idea that I love this trajectory that you're on, and bringing us back to Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, I preached a message in our church. I did a series called Remember the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things when you talk about Sabbath being for all of creation, what we got to understand is all of creation on the Sabbath, and man, human beings, we are the only part of creation that violates Sabbath.
Yes.
The animal kingdom, they rest. They know when to rest. They know when to go in and when to come out. The tide goes in and out. The water understands it. The firmament, the stars, every part of creation, plant life, all of it.
There's a rhythm.
Sea life. They understand the rhythm of Sabbath and work and rest. But we are the only part of creation that feels like we have to be on 24/7, 7 days a week. Come on. 12 months out of a year, 365 days without rest. I can't tell you the number of people, and I tell people this when I'm teaching on self-care and Sabbath and holistic living. With these jobs, listen, honey, you can work yourself to death, but listen, when you die, they will replace you before your body is cold.
My grandmother worked for 30 years as a school teacher, never took her vacation time. When she retired, they gave her the same watch they gave everyone else. And all her health challenges from not taking care of herself and working so hard, there was no, it's not getting that back. You're right. Doesn't pay. And if you look at how Jesus's earthly life and ministry, I'm always struck by the story of Jesus and Zacchaeus, how he's just out walking around. He sees this guy in a tree. He's like, hey, you come down. I'm coming to your house. Mm-hmm. And he goes to his house. And the thing is, I'm like, he didn't send him a note or send him a text and be like, hey, I'm going to be in town in 2 days. I'm going to come over so he could get ready and like get the house clean and stock up on food. And you know how we do when somebody's coming in town.
Yeah.
Put together, fluff up, get the stuff they like in there. He went to his house. And Jesus is constantly seen in relationship with people, in people's houses, lingering over food and enjoying people's company. There's a sumptuousness to the manner, I will say, of Jesus.
Wow.
That when Jesus is doing miracles, he's out among the people. He's out in the crowd. He's out enjoying the weather and the elements and whatever it is that is going on at that place. Like he's not set aside in a church office or his house, waiting for people, making people sign up. And I'm not saying that we don't have schedules and things. I'm just saying that I think we've lost the sumptuousness of our practice, that lingering over lunch. You know, you and I, we'll go to lunch at 12. When we first started doing it, it was like, okay, girl, we'll go to lunch at 12. I have something at 2. Now I'm like, I'm going to lunch with Toni. I'm going to just clear the afternoon.
Exactly.
We're going to take our time and talk.
They brought us 15 drinks.
That's right. Right. Dessert, you know, a little dessert. We're going to go to the mall and walk around. Like, it's a sumptuous time. And so I already know that, like, I'm not going to schedule anything that I have to do in a couple hours because I know I'm not going to make it. I'm just not going to.
And, you know, and I don't think that, and Wayne Mueller says about Jesus, he says Jesus obeyed a deeper rhythm. And that's the thing that we have to do. We have to find that deeper rhythm that calls that to know when to rest, when to be with people, when to pull away, when to be with the very few like Jesus, or when to be with the crowd, or when to be alone, when to sit at Mary's house all day, when to, you know, all of that. It's such a good concept, and it's something that we have to get back to. I really appreciate you, Jen, for calling us back to Sabbath. I appreciate. I can tell you, even for my own life, I had got coming into this year. I was like, God, I have to get back to the rhythm of Sabbath, and I am so grateful. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to start my first day of the year like I did. I was like, I'm going to start the first day of the year really honoring rest and just doing what. And I said to my husband, I said to Bishop, I said, at the end of the day, I looked at him and I said, I'm just so glad that I took today to do what I felt like doing, not what everybody else wanted me to do. Not what everybody else thought I should be doing, but what I sensed in my spirit that I needed to be doing. If I felt like I needed to do it, I did. If I felt like I didn't, I didn't. And it was so refreshing to be able to do that. And it gave me the energy that I need. And I'm going to commit. You're going to hold me accountable. I am going to commit to every 7 days having a Sabbath. Every 7 days, I'm going to commit. And I was so good with it at one point. But you're right. You get off and we start working at home and this, that, and the other. And so I appreciate you as a girlfriend. I appreciate you coming on the podcast and calling us back to Sabbath. Listen, Ellipsis Women's Conference, are you doing anything that the ladies can
Yeah. So we are, we're kicking off, you know, last year we started when we went into COVID, we couldn't do our annual conference. And so we started doing a series of gatherings online called Girls Night In. And it was started just to be, you know, a couple of them here or there, but people really enjoyed them and they've missed them. So this year, kicking off in January, we'll be starting our Girls Night In again once a month, where we just have kind of a conversation like we've had now. I'll have one of my friends come in. We talk about something. Usually we'll have some kind of game or activity that we'll do. And just a connection time for us to just kind of connect, because I find at the moment that's what's really a lot of us are missing, just connecting, seeing, you know, other people. We try to, you know, pick a different theme every month. And so that's coming back. We are going to do a virtual conference in the spring. So first foray into that, because I don't think we're going to be out of the season, you know. So we'll be doing that. So and we've been doing Bible studies. We do every 6 weeks or so. We'll start a new Bible study. And so if people want more information, they can go to my website.
I got it there, Jennifer Watley Maxell.
So
JenniferWatleyMaxell.com. Right. Go to JenniferWatleyMaxell.com. And I'm saying it, Jennifer, for those who are listening and may not be watching us on YouTube. So it's www.Jennifer, 2 N's, Watley, Watley, Maxell, Maxell.com. I like to do that for those that may be listening. If you're not watching us on YouTube, you can go to YouTube and find us at Dr. Toni G. Alvarado. You'll find this conversation with Jen, on Reverend Jen on Sabbath, and I believe it's going to be a blessing. They can also follow you, Jen. I'm putting your IG up at J. Watley Maxell. Yep. You can follow her there at J. Watley Maxell. She's on Facebook at Jennifer Watley Maxell. You can look her up. If you go to her website, it'll connect you to all of what she's doing with Ellipsis Women's. I have been a part of Ellipsis, and I'm telling you, it is a refreshing time for women. The Breakthrough Fellowship is also her local church, so you can find out about Ellipsis and you can find out about Breakthrough on Jennifer's website at jenniferwatleymaxell.com. I want to thank you all for joining our conversation on today. Remember that you can find us on my website at drtonyalvarado.com. You can follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can find us on Anchor. You can also find us on YouTube there. I'm going to give you my YouTube channel, Dr. Toni G. Alvarado. And I want to invite you ladies to join the Harmonize Your Life Women's Self-Care Network. Like Reverend Jen, we're doing similar work with women and empowering women and having these kind of real conversations. When you join the network, you get links into Tea Time with Dr. Toni, and I bring in speakers just like Reverend Jen and others who come in and share with us during those really special, intimate times. We're doing it in the virtual space, but yet we're still connecting women, and we're still having these self-care conversations and making sure that we can live our lives holistically, that we can honor Sabbath, that we can be true to ourselves and be happy while we're doing it, okay? Be happy while we're doing it. Jen, thank you again. Thank you so much for coming into the podcast studio with me today. I'm looking forward to 2021 and what God is going to do in and through you. You are doing some amazing work, and I'm so excited that we are sisters, that we are friends, and we are forever connected.
Yes, this has been a blessing. Thank you so much. It's been great to be here, just be able to, catch up, and we are going to hold each other accountable.
That's
our regular every 7-day practice.
Every 7 days. We're going to text each other.
Yes.
You doing your Sabbath? You got Sabbath? You done your Sabbath? Yes. That's another thing. You all get you an accountability partner. That's one of the things you can do by joining groups like the Ellipsis Women's Fellowship, joining groups like the Harmonize Your Life. When you connect with other women, like-minded women, like what Jen and I do, we can hold one another accountable and make sure that we not only am I healthy, but you're healthy. Because what good is it for me to be healthy and be connected to an unhealthy community? All right. So let's do that. All right, Jen, I'm going to let you get back to your day. Thank you again. Love you so much.
Love you too, girl. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, this is Dr. Toni Alvarado. I am so delighted about bringing the Harmonize Your Life podcast to you. Would you do me a favor? If you are enjoying this podcast, would you email me at hello@drtonyalvarado.com? I want to hear from you. I want your feedback. I want to know if there are any other topics that you are interested in as it relates to wellness, self-care, nutrition, or just overall bringing harmony into your life. Email me, contact me at hello@drtonyalvarado.com.